Introduction. A large part of nearly everyone's life is, or should be, about interacting with others. Unfortunately, for a growing number of us, that type of social interaction is the cause of great anxiety and extreme self-consciousness. Over 5.5 million Americans alone suffer from this phobia, which is most commonly referred to as social anxiety disorder, and these numbers are matched throughout the Western world. Many experts say this is the world's third most prevalent mental health issue, the effects of which can be absolutely crippling. There's a pretty wide range of thought on the root causes of social anxiety disorder. Something that's blindingly apparent is that where society is today and the direction it's continuing to move in aggravates this affliction more and more. This makes taking it very seriously and learning how we can cure it all the more important. If you or a loved one suffer from social anxiety disorder, you've come to the right place. Our guide here will do our best to provide a deep look at all the most important areas surrounding social anxiety disorder, and perhaps even more importantly break down easily actionable steps that can be taken to regain a dynamic quality of life. These tips have been learned the hard way and are backed up by real-life experience in addition to good solid science. A fulfilling and happy life free of social anxiety is an achievable goal for all of us. Knowledge is power, and once we understand the root causes of social anxiety disorder, we are well on our way to being able to overcome them, or at the very least mitigate their effects. Realistically, we may not be able to exert much influence to change the way society operates. Things like normalcy bias, where society pressures its members to be in constant competition to keep up with other people's achievements, is likely here to stay. So is much of society's institutions pushing excessive achievement motivation, which can greatly aggravate social anxiety disorder. It would be great if they recognized there were more positive ways to accomplish their goals, but we can't count on their eyes opening. What we can do is provide for ourselves and our loved ones all the tools available to fight and cure social anxiety disorder. We can learn how these tools work, become proficient in them, and even show them to others who may be facing the same type of fight. A fight that may at times require effort and work, but which is absolutely winnable. Transformations are occurring as social anxiety disorder is overcome each and every day. Reading this guide, I hope, can help open the doors to your own new anxiety-free life, or that of a person close to you. Just be sure, if you hope to get the most out of this, to first keep an open mind about life's possibilities. Secondly, when all is said and done, be willing to take action. That willingness can make miracles happen. If we do the same things we have been doing, in all likelihood the root causes of social anxiety disorder will never be addressed and overcome. When we make even small changes, and take the advice of people who have both experience and understanding of what we are facing with social anxiety disorder, we are on our way to being cured. Let's get started. Chapter 1: What is social anxiety? We've already touched on just how common social anxiety disorder is. To make it even clearer, by some expert estimates, it touches as high as 13% of the population. That's right, over 1 in 10 people experience some degree of social anxiety disorder, which means if we don't experience it ourselves, we all certainly have a friend, loved one, or co-worker who is facing it every day. Let's take this chance to look closer at what the term social anxiety disorder covers. Once we understand it more clearly, taking steps to overcome it becomes much more easy. What is social anxiety disorder? Now, it's perfectly normal and common for a person to feel somewhat apprehensive about speaking in front of crowds, approaching a member of the opposite sex, or going on a job interview. These are all things which cause social anxiety in average people every day. Some worse than others, of course. When these feelings of stress and anxiety are amplified greatly, and when the areas that cause them to rise are also widely expanded, we've entered the territory of social anxiety disorder. Again, its effects can be crippling. Instead of following through with the actions that make one uncomfortable when suffering from social anxiety disorder, it's much more likely the person just doesn't do them at all. Or if they are completed, it is so draining it feels like near torture, It's obvious how much this will hurt the potential quality of life of the person in social anxiety disorder's grips. This intense fear of social situations is the easiest way to identify social anxiety disorder. In many cases, this fear will spread to not only taking part in social situations, but also even to talking or thinking about these types of social exchanges and interactions. It's important to understand that a person realizing they are experiencing social anxiety disorder is just not enough to overcome it. Many people realize they have been suffering from social anxiety disorder for years, but without a solid plan to overcome it, like the one presented later on here in our guide, they continue to run on the treadmill of extreme social anxiety without any way off. Just knowing intellectually that the feelings of stress and anxiety are overblown is not near enough to overcome them. Social anxiety disorder is a serious mental health issue which requires smart work to overcome. Social anxiety disorder should not be confused with shyness, and its serious nature should never be underestimated. Even less severe forms of this phobia can become amplified over time if not worked on. What starts off as anxiety over speaking in front of new people could eventually blow up into not even being able to go out to a movie with friends or eat dinner at a public restaurant. In more rare cases, any sort of social interaction at all could become extremely psychologically painful. If you or someone you care about is experiencing social anxiety disorder, the sooner you begin to work towards it being cured, the better. Delaying could see it become much more complicated to overcome. Chapter 2, The History of Social Anxiety. It's easy to think of social anxiety disorder as a totally new problem, but that's not true at all. Yes, like we've already touched on, modern conditions seem to have aggravated social anxiety, making it both more widespread and severe, but we can see signs of what would come to be called social anxiety disorder dating all the way back to 400 BC. It's very likely there has been some form of social anxiety disorder as long as man has gathered and formed societies. Let's take a quick look at the history of social anxiety disorder. Social anxiety disorder timeline 400 BC, with Greek philosophers of the age making reference to those who socially prefer darkness to light, and who worry about all men watching them. This is our earliest record of social anxiety disorder. Hippocrates wrote about these phobias quite extensively. 1910, first use of the term social neurosis and social phobia by psychiatrists to describe what we now call social anxiety disorder. Serious, though flawed, work on treating its symptoms begins. These methods hardly help most patients at all. Early 1950s, a famed Dr. Joe Walp develops desensitization techniques in his South African practice to treat a long list of phobias, including social anxiety. These are truly useful and continue to be used with success in many cases today. 1961, the first suggestions appear in England and Western Europe by psychiatrists to treat social anxiety as a separate and distinct condition apart from other phobias. The importance of this distinction cannot be overstressed. This marks a change where social anxiety views shift away from curing shyness to something more serious. 1968, the major textbook covering mental illnesses in America, the DSM, releases its second edition, which describes a very limited range as falling into social anxiety disorder. This includes speaking or performing in front of others and an overreaching fear of being observed. The DSM is published by the American Psychiatric Association and is widely considered one of the psychiatric field's most important texts. 1981, the third edition of the DSM is released. Social phobia becomes a full and official diagnosis available to psychiatrists. The description of social phobia somewhat broadens, but is still far from the wide definition it holds today. 1984, American therapists launch an extensive campaign to study and research what is still called social phobia. This research is both well-funded and well-attended. 1988, the term social anxiety disorder begins to be used in the revised third edition of the DSM text and elsewhere. 1994, the fourth edition of the DSM is released and social anxiety disorder is now used, completely replacing social phobia. The definition is now much more broad and general, giving more freedom for social anxiety disorder diagnosis. 1996, today. The DSM 4th edition has encouraged wider study and development of new methods to treat and cure social anxiety disorder. Things like CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, become widely used and endorsed by professional therapists for their positive results. New medications are made available to combat social anxiety disorder as well. Social anxiety disorder is clearly not a new problem. The good news is that we've had a very long time to see what works and what doesn't when it comes to curing it. The hard work of the past is manifested in the tools we use today, many of which you will learn as we dive deeper into our guide. Chapter 3, Getting to Know Your Social Anxiety. Why do you have these fears? There's no more natural question to ask if you or a loved one are suffering from social anxiety disorder. The more we understand social anxiety, including its root causes, the more apt we are in overcoming it. Experts today part with some of the ideas of earlier decades in believing most cases of social anxiety disorder don't spring from one event's lasting effects, but instead social anxiety is the result of a number of different probable causes. These include both environmental and genetic factors. Here are some of the most prominent of the factors leading to social anxiety disorder. While you read them, take a minute to consider if each are likely to have been one of the forces behind your own experiences of social anxiety disorder. This type of revelation can bring hidden strength when you work through some of the methods to help cure social anxiety. Genetic roots. Social anxiety disorder has been shown to run in family lines. Recent research has shown that this is not just learned behavior, but almost certainly also has genetic origins. Overdeveloped amygdala. The amygdala is the part of the brain responsible for fear response. When even slightly overdeveloped, doctors feel this leads to an increased tendency towards social anxiety disorder. Unbalanced serotonin levels. Serotonin is a key brain chemical that regulates emotional states. When unbalanced, social anxiety disorder can become the end result. This can come from natural causes or have become unbalanced from past drug or alcohol abuse. Family conflict. A history of family conflict, especially at an early age, is one of the most common social factors known to cause social anxiety disorder. Bullying. Bullying is one of the environmental factors that has been receiving a great deal of attention lately for it being known to aggravate young people's social anxiety, sometimes with very tragic results. History of sexual abuse or extreme maltreatment. Sexual abuse and other severe maltreatment very often leads to the more severe end of social anxiety disorder. In many cases, these types of experiences require multiple levels of therapy to ultimately resolve not only the heightened social anxiety, but also the other effects of this trauma. Weather conditions. Studies have shown living in an area where it is more cloudy and rainy than not, cities like Seattle and London, have much higher rates of social anxiety disorder than those with pleasant weather and plenty of sun. Some theorize that warmer weather encourages more social contact, which leads to a lesser chance of social anxiety disorder developing. Studies are underway which will provide much more information on this interesting area of research very soon. This list of the causes of social anxiety disorder is not all-inclusive, and sometimes determining its root can be difficult. Thankfully, the methods used to cure it have been shown to be effective regardless. With the right combination of smart work and a willingness to try to change, real miracles can and do happen. For the great majority of its victims, social anxiety disorder can be cured. Chapter 4, Beginning the Pathway to Change. Every important journey begins with the first few steps, and often these first few steps are the most difficult. Overcoming social anxiety disorder is no different. Even when we realize we truly need a change, that we need to do those things that others before us have done to become better, beginning the pathway to change can be challenging. There's a few things we can keep in mind and tips to follow that can help. I can't guarantee that they will make the first few steps easy. Making that type of promise to a person with social anxiety disorder would be insincere. What I do know is that despite initial discomfort, they will make the first big hurdle of breaking inertia possible to get over. They've worked again and again for people with even the worst phobias. they'll most likely work for you too. Clearly established change is necessary. The first thing that you need to come to terms with yourself more than anyone else is just how necessary change is. If you have a big enough why, getting through the how end of things is fueled by real desire. This motivating force should never be underestimated. Sit down with a pen and paper and write down the areas that your social anxiety disorder is having a negative influence on. Turn the page and write your dreams that you can more easily achieve without social anxiety disorder handcuffing your ability to communicate, establish relationships and take action. When this is complete, read over both lists for as long as it takes for these truths to really sink in. When you are done, this should give both your conscious and subconscious mind the foundation it needs to support your effort to cure your social anxiety. Find a plan and stick with it. One of the real obstacles to making lasting positive change in life, which is exactly the area where curing social anxiety disorder falls into, is lack of commitment. You can find many different ideas on how to ease social phobias, including those presented here in our guide. Almost all will work to varying degrees if you work their method and stick with it until you see positive results. What doesn't work is trying something for a few days and allowing impatience to seize control and immediately jumping to a different program. Choose a plan to fight your social anxiety disorder, stick to it and give it a chance to work. If you need a bit of extra motivation, think of the story of the man who was mining for gold and stopped only a few inches away from what would have been his big discovery, only to return to a life of poverty. Self-help can often be the same way. Don't change plans like you change socks, give the work a chance to work. Start sooner rather than later. It's pretty likely you have suffered from social anxiety disorder for way too long. The final piece of advice I have on beginning the pathway to change is to not overthink things and begin today. Once you are on the path and begin gaining momentum, you are that much closer to freedom. Letting doing it beat out thinking about it. What are you waiting for? Get started. Chapter 5, Changing Your Thoughts and Expectations. How our mind approaches the idea of change is a key factor in our feelings of social anxiety. Being able to change our thoughts to a more positive outlook is in many ways a learned skill. The same thing can be said about managing our expectations in a way free from over-negativity. When these two inner battlefields are mastered, much steam is taken out of the sails of social anxiety disorder. Developing more control over how we think and what we expect can be thought of as a kind of inner game of happiness. Taking these steps will help develop real power where you very likely need it the most. Do your best to be in the now. Social anxiety disorder stings us through running events in our mind that occur in our future should we socially interact with a person or people. A way to trick our mind into not running through these processes is to do our best to stay in the now. The more we think about what's occurring right in front of us and disengage from thoughts of the future socially, the less power social anxiety holds over us. Whole systems of self-help philosophy have been set up around this simple idea, and for good reason. It works and works well. If you would like to explore this actionable idea that's worth its weight in gold further, pick up a copy of The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. You may join the many who find it an inspiration in their struggles with social anxiety. Make a conscious decision to skip perfectionism. All progress is good and gets us closer to our goal of living completely free of social anxiety. The idea of being overly self-critical and practicing perfectionism can be a huge roadblock towards achieving our goal of being social anxiety free. We don't need this pressure at all, as it only serves to make our work more difficult and sabotage our gains. Instead, recognize that some days are better than others and every step forward is worth celebrating over. This mindset will reward you again and again, especially when you realize emotional freedom comes quicker and easier than when you demand too much of yourself. Strive to forget about what others think. None of us can ever please everybody all the time. Nor can we expect positive reactions from others at all times either. These are completely unrealistic expectations that no one, I repeat no one, can live up to. You take back your personal power when you care less about what others may or may not be thinking. You throw water on the flames of social anxiety when you are able to move beyond concerns of what others are thinking at all times. Or even most of the time. Instead, strive to invest your energy in thinking positive and taking action. This is what you can control nearly 100%. And what you can influence nearly 100%. It's the wisest and best way to spend your energy. Believe it or not, shifting our thoughts away from what others are thinking and onto something else is as simple as it sounds. The truth to these pieces of advice are easily confirmed. Try it and see for yourself. Chapter 6, Gain Confidence. An obvious need for anyone in the fight to cure their social anxiety disorder is to gain more self-confidence. In fact, you can think of self-confidence as being the exact opposite of social anxiety. It's the ability to summon up the power to engage socially without fear or anxiety. Fortunately, we have many sources to draw from when we consider ways to help build confidence. It's a subject that's very dear to everyone, from those seeking more business success, to those aspiring to excel more at athletics, to dating coaches hoping to help their clients improve their relationship lives. These are all people who share a need to see real results in their attempts to build confidence, which makes them excellent sources to draw inspiration from when we are looking for methods to build our own confidence in the face of social anxiety disorder. Let's take a look at some of these proven strategies and techniques. Work on applying them and taking action. And exposing yourself to the situations that have been known to cause your social anxiety to rise is one of the paths to emotional freedom. Practice positive visualizations. What the mind believes it can achieve. Spend at least 30 minutes a day visualizing yourself in any one of the situations that commonly causes you to experience social anxiety, and that situation ending with an absolutely wonderful outcome. This exercise tricks your mind into the habit of expecting good results in social situations. It doesn't work overnight, but once it seeps into your subconscious mind, the change can be sudden, like a lightning flash. The more time a day you can dedicate to your visualizations, ideally in 2 sittings, first thing in the morning and again before bed at night, the better. Train yourself to move confidently. A second trick of the subconscious mind is how much our physiology, or how we carry our bodies, has influence on it. By always reminding ourselves to carry ourselves physically as if we were feeling confident, we make it much more likely for real confidence to follow. Chin up, shoulders back, and a smile. Make eye contact when speaking. Many don't believe the potency of this technique until they try it. Give it a chance and you will likely become a believer in it too. Explore becoming more fit. Building up physical fitness through exercise and a healthy diet can pay off in big ways in self-confidence. Becoming stronger and feeling better often can't help but translate into a more confident sense of self. There's no need to dive into complicated programs that may be stressful to follow. Start off slow and work on becoming more active each day. As you become more fit, don't be surprised to see your confidence grow as well. Find a role model. If you have a person in your life who is confident, why not spend time modeling their behavior? Having a resource like this to work with and learn from is a secret of success that has also been a part of the program used to cure many people of their social anxiety. Can you think of anyone in your own life who may be a good choice to learn from? In our next chapter, we will touch on just where and how you can apply these confidence-gaining techniques. Are you ready? Chapter 7, Exposure to Uncomfortable Sensations and Social Situations. Once we have a few of the strategies for developing greater self-confidence down from our last chapter of our guide, the next big step is to start practicing what many therapists refer to as exposure therapy. This combination can be thought of as a kind of 1-2 punch to knock out social anxiety disorder. For the majority of people, nothing works better, and on top of that, having a professional to help can be of some benefit, but it's far from a requirement. Real results up to a complete cure of social anxiety disorder aren't uncommon after exposure therapy. Exciting, isn't it? Before we get into some of the more common ways to use exposure therapy, let's look at what it is exactly. Exposure therapy is easy to understand. It's taking the things that cause a person's social anxiety and slowly exposing them to it. This act, done in very small doses at first, slowly building up exposure as the person builds up their social tolerance. Ideally, after some time the social anxiety will completely have disappeared. The timeline can be short or long depending on the individual circumstance. Here's 2 examples. Exposure therapy for overcoming fear of social situations. This broad area covers a great deal of the experiences that most people with social anxiety disorder experience. The beginnings of this type of exposure therapy can be quite simple. A goal can be set to talk to a store clerk at first. After a few successes, it can be amped up to talking to 2 or 3 strangers a day, simply making small talk. Then attending a place known for social interaction like a party or nightclub. Perhaps later a plan can be set up and executed to host a party of your own. The important thing is to take as many small steps as necessary, not to rush things, and to celebrate your successes. Exposure therapy for the fear of being the center of attention. Being the center of attention is another very common manifestation of social anxiety disorder. This fear is often reacted to by a drive towards extreme introversion and often a total inability to speak or present oneself to even a small group of people. One of the first things you can do in exposure therapy for the fear of being the center of attention is to dress in something that attracts attention, that is flamboyant and flashy. Getting up the confidence to do this and interact in the conversations that start is a great first start. Next, as an exercise, make a phone call in front of people and make a point of talking very loudly. Become the center of unwilling attention and continue talking anyway. After this, join in on a conversation about a controversial subject. Finally, play a sport or game with spectators watching. There is of course many substitutions that can be made depending on your own age, lifestyle, etc. The vitally important thing is to make it uncomfortable and scale your efforts up with time. This is the recipe for success over social anxiety disorder. The more we get used to doing the things that cause our social anxiety disorder, the less hold they have over us. Are you ready to start today? Chapter 8, Natural Remedies for Social Anxiety. If you are familiar at all with the natural health movement, you are probably aware that many ailments can be treated effectively without resorting to using potentially dangerous drugs and chemicals. Social anxiety disorder is no different. Mainstream doctors and therapists don't often share this information with their clients, but the truth is that there are natural remedies that can help not only make social anxiety more manageable, but even help cure it. These shouldn't be considered standalone measures, but when combined with the other methods shared here in our guide, they can be an absolutely huge help. Results vary by individual and, of course, always be sure that you aren't allergic or ultra-sensitive to any of the items below before taking full doses. Natural remedies for social anxiety. Kava. A popular root native to the Pacific Islands, kava and kava extracts are known to have a calming effect minus the problems associated with narcotics. Mild and non-addictive kava gives many people relief from social anxiety as well as other problems like insomnia. Use in moderation, as tolerance is known to quickly build up with daily use. B vitamins. B vitamins are probably the most popular and widely used remedy for social anxiety disorder. Supplementing with B vitamins has been shown in studies, and real-world experience, to promote emotional calmness and stability. Often very high doses are used, a testament to B vitamins' overall safety. St. John's wort. St. John's wort is such a powerful treatment for anxiety and depression. In some countries this herb is considered a prescription drug. St. John's wort should always be treated with respect and only sourced from reputable supplement companies, as there has been reports of inferior products out on the market looking to cash in on its top-notch reputation. Potassium. Potassium deficiency is known to aggravate anxiety and feelings of depression. Taking a potassium supplement or eating potassium-rich foods, like bananas, can counteract this. This is especially important in hot climates or for those who are involved in athletic activities. Sweating can cause potassium depletion. Oranges. A healthy treat that natural health experts credit as an antidepressant. Some recommend adding a bit of organic honey and nutmeg to a glass of orange juice first thing in the morning. Many swear by it. Almonds, almond milk and almond butter. Almonds are a healthy food that have been shown to have a natural calming effect. Versatile and easy to incorporate into a diet, as long as no nut allergies are present. Almonds, almond milk, and almond butter are all great options for the person combating social anxiety disorder. Don't forget, a solid healthy diet is a must when we are fighting social anxiety disorder. These remedies on top of it can truly speed up the healing process and give us more emotional freedom and freedom to act. A few good guidebooks on diet and exercise can become almost as valuable to your progress as anything else. The old adage, a healthy body leads to a healthy mind, is not just some cliché. It's solid advice that should be taken to heart. Chapter 9, Communication is the key. One of the side effects of having suffered from social anxiety disorder for any period of time is not having had the chance to develop effective communication skills. This stings two ways. First, it can cause social stumbles when in the early days of working to cure one's social anxiety disorder. Secondly, even when the social anxiety phobia is gone or near gone, it can still create a kind of awkwardness that can be difficult to overcome. Making an effort to learn how to communicate more effectively right from the start of working through your social anxiety pays huge dividends. Sticking with it for the long run will do wonders for your continued quality of life. These tips will help. Focus on the person or people you are speaking with. Social anxiety will tempt you to think of everything but the conversation you are engaging in. By doing your best to focus on the person or people you are talking with and the conversation you are engaged in, social anxiety will lose some of its steam. You will also be much more able to establish a sense of rapport. Everyone loves a good listener, don't they? Avoid interrupting. It's only natural that you would feel a need to speak quickly in an effort to break free of social anxiety's grasp. This overcompensation is not a way to effectively communicate. Instead, make an effort to not interrupt others when they talk. All great communicators master this skill. Keep things simple. Anxiety can make you long-winded. As much as possible, in nearly every situation, keeping things simple, direct, and to the point will allow you to communicate much more effectively. Don't worry about sounding intelligent or trying to impress with a huge vocabulary. Communicating clearly, understanding and being understood is the goal that you should be focusing on. Not trying to make things overcomplicated. Don't be afraid to plan ahead. If you are planning to have a conversation about something in advance, don't be afraid to have a few key points in mind beforehand. These can help you stay on point and be sure that all of the things you would like to touch on are discussed. Planning ahead can even involve writing things down and looking them over a few times if that learning method resonates well with you, like it does with many. The important thing to keep in mind with this tip is to not be afraid of planning ahead for an important conversation. Speak at a moderate pace and at a moderate volume. Social anxiety can unconsciously alter our speaking habits to make them less than perfect in communicating effectively. Speaking too low out of shyness or too quickly out of nervousness are common problems that can be corrected with just a little practice. Recruit a sympathetic ear to lend a hand, or even using a tape recorder to practice with, can help you correct these issues. Speaking at a moderate pace in a moderate volume are hallmarks of a good communicator. Communication is key. With these tips in mind, great conversations are right around the corner. Conclusion: maintenance and planning for the future. I have all the faith and confidence in the world that if you have taken the time to read and understand this guide, and you most importantly take action and apply its concepts, your social anxiety will be overcome. The road could be a short one or a long one depending on how severe your condition, but either way you will find yourself able to interact with others socially free from anxiety and communicate effectively. You may even find yourself healthier and more filled with energy. Being happier is almost certain too. All this is awesome, but it doesn't mean you still don't have an important challenge ahead of you. The challenge of staying psychologically healthy. of making sure your social anxiety doesn't return. Because believe me, it is possible. I've seen social anxiety relapses and they can be far from pretty. So the smart thing is we keep this danger in mind and take steps to stay social anxiety free. Here's some pointers how. Don't get lazy, keep doing what works. By this point you will have found some of the methods in here work much better for you than others. These are the things that have helped you overcome social anxiety disorder. The smartest thing you can do is to continue practicing them even if the symptoms of your phobia have seemed to disappear. Think of this as a sort of mental fitness training to keep you healthy and fit. If not, you run the risk of ending back up at square one. Always stay socially engaged. Staying socially active and engaged is a great way to enlist others as a support system for your recovery even if they don't know about your past issues. Doing this consciously will stop the problem of isolation before it ever occurs. When the temptation arises, if it should, pick up the phone, or meet up face to face and spend your time with friends and loved ones. Never retreat back into your shell. Ever. Consider joining a support group. Depending on where you live, there is a good chance that a local social anxiety disorder support style group exists. Attending a weekly meeting can not only help you with your own recovery process, but also gives you a good opportunity to share your own success story with others. Giving back to someone in need is the finest way of expressing gratitude and can do wonderful things for you inside and out. The future is bright. Thank you for taking the time to invest in yourself and your future by reading this guide. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to share some of the things that have helped me change my life for the better. It's the best thank you I could give to my own mentors and teachers. If social anxiety is a type of mental fog, you now have the spotlight of truth and clarity to make your way forward clear. All things are possible and I can't wait to hear your own success story. Shoot for the stars.